So why is Islam seen by many Westerns as a threat to our values and our political organizations? I believe a major cause relates to the lack of social engagement across religious and cultural boundaries. Generally, we can say that Europe is marked by diversity, but not necessarily pluralism. At least not in the sense the American professor Diana Eck expresses it. She's leading the Pluralism Project at Harvard University, and she says diversity is simply the existence of diverse religious and cultural communities in a society. Diversity means often communities living side by side, what easily leads to segregation and tensions. And I quote her, "Today, religious diversity is a given, but pluralism is not a given. It is an achievement. Mere diversity without real encounter and relationship will yield increasing tensions in our societies." These uprisings display similar feelings and frustrations among these youngsters, feelings of alienation and exclusion. It is the voice of the second and third generation of immigrants that were never given a chance to find their place and their role in the society. I will argue that we Europeans need to be much more aware of the effect of our policies and debates on integration and immigration on the relations between Europe and Muslim communities around the world. We are living in a globalized world where the European internal debates destructively feed on the global discourse relating to Islam-Western relations. And vice versa. We see how these debates create anger and frustration among Muslim communities inside and outside Europe. And under such circumstances, I would argue that dialogue is not only a meaningful tool, it is perhaps the only tool to build better relations on the ground between communities and across regions. And that is exactly why the Oslo Center is involved in developing venues of international dialogue.
Yale University Center for Faith and Culture, and my question is for former Prime Minister Bondevik. Earlier this morning, the so-called Danish cartoons were mentioned, and of course, when that crisis first became a big deal internationally, people were also referring to them as the Norwegian cartoons because there was a Norwegian magazine that had also published them, and there were anti-Norwegian riots in the Middle East. Subsequently, the editor of that magazine apologized and held a joint press conference with the leader of the Muslim community in Norway, and much of the anger at Norway disappeared after that. I'd like you to comment, if you would. Do you think the magazine editor was right or wrong when he published them? Was he right or wrong when he apologized? And would you comment on the role the Norwegian government did or did not play in that crisis? Thank you.
Yeah. At least that's a very interesting question, because it really goes to the core of the necessity of dialogue. Because what's happened is right. It was printed first in Denmark, and so in a magazine in Norway. But what happened? In Norway, we had many years of dialogue between Christians and Muslims, also formalized in a council for all religions and life stands in Norway. So we had the background for discussing such hot issues. So what happened was that when this cartoon was printed, and we know that one of them, even with the Holy Prophet Muhammad as a terrorist, Christians and Muslim leaders came together immediately. And they had a good discussion of the balance between the freedom of expression on the one hand and not harass religious feelings on the other. And they came out with a common statement, which calmed down the tensions in Norway. And as a part of that, the editor apologize for what he did. If you want my personal view, we have the freedom of expression in our democracies, but on the other hand, we don't have to use it at all times, in every situation. We don't have to misuse it. So to print a cartoon with the Holy Prophet Muhammad as a terrorist, I stood up in Norway and said that should not have been done. You don't have to use your freedom of expression in that way. So I didn't agree when he printed it. I did agree when he apologized. But first of all, the situation in Norway was very different from in Denmark, because in Denmark they didn't have this background of and tradition of dialogue. So the tensions and the conflicts were much higher in Denmark. In Norway we were able to solve it because of our tradition of dialogue.
So freedom of expression comes with responsibility. Freedom of
yes,
expression
you have to use it with great responsibility.
Okay.
حلقتنا ولازم نتفق على المسابقه ولازم نتفق على نعمل ايه وحاجه لها علاقه بالتفكير ولها علاقه بالقرايه ولها علاقه بمشروع ال 10,000 كتاب اللي موجود على الموقع. هنعمل ايه؟ هتدخل دلوقتي اول ما تشوف الحلقه على عمروخالد دوت نت هتلاقي ايه على عمروخالد دوت نت؟ هتلاقي اختبار كله صح وغلط 10 اسئله هتجاوب عليه بسرعه. الحقوا جاوبوا عليه النهارده لان اخر موعد الاجابه عليه بكره. بعد بكره خلاص هم دول اللي هيشتركوا معانا في المسابقه وبعد كده هم دول اللي هيكملوا معانا مسابقه الاسبوع ده. فمن فضلك ادخل بسرعه جاوب على الاختبار. الاختبار ده هيطلع ايه؟ هيطلع مين ال10 الاوائل. ال10 الاوائل اللي هنطلعهم هنختار منهم 5 هم دول ال5 اللي هيقودوا المنتدى. خلاص بقيتوا عارفين القصه. هيقودوا المسابقه معانا والمنتدى الاسبوع ده. 10 اسئله صح وغلط هتجاوب اوتوماتيكيا مش انا اللي هختار. الكمبيوتر هيطلع احسن 5 اجابات. ال5 دول اللي هيكسبوا هنطلب منكم مشروع تكملوا بيه الاسبوع ده. ايه المشروع بتاع الاسبوع ده؟ مشروع له علاقه بالقرايه، له علاقه عشان نفكر مع بعض مين كل مجموعه. هيتقسم كل الناس اللي جاوبت على غرف كتير، على 50 غرفه. كل مجموعه تقعد تعرض على بعضها اسماء كتب نقدر نلخصها ونحطها في صفحتين ملخصة وتقدموا لنا ورقة عمل بيها. احنا بنقول الكتاب ده هو احسن كتاب. يعني عندنا هيطلع 50 كتاب. كل مجموعة بتقعد تتناقش مع بعضها وتطلع كتاب، ودول يطلعوا كتاب ودول يطلعوا كتاب. في الاخر في كتاب هيفوز، هو ده اللي هيشارك معانا بجايزة ويكون مرشح انه يشتغل معانا في برنامج مجددون الجزء الثاني. وهو ده اللي هنحطه على النت وهو ده اللي هنقول فاز معانا. ايه اللي مطلوب منكم؟ فورا جاوب على الاختبار. هنطلع ال5 الاوائل، هنبدا نعمل مسابقه. هدف المسابقه اختيار افضل كتاب ضمن مشروع عايزين نحط 10,000 كتاب على موقع عمروخالد دوت نت. دي مسابقه المره دي حلقه النهارده. شدوا حيلكم يا شباب، كله يدخل على عمروخالد دوت نت دلوقتي ويجاوب على الاختبار ده ونكمل شغلنا مع بعض وانا معاكم طول الاسبوع. شكرا والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.